far, and that is modeling. I will quickly run through the PowerPoint slides, and then we'll move over to our Power BI. But today, like I said, because this is something we've done, we did it in the last class, it's more or less like a recap, and then one or two things I want to believe it's also going to be very interactive, because you people are going to be the ones doing the job for me, and then I'll just be there probably guiding. All right. I'll just share my slides now. All right. Okay. Please confirm that you can see my screen.
We can see your face. Okay.
Yes, I can see your screen, actually. I can see your
All right.
screen.
Hold
Okay,
on.
now I can see your screen.
Oh my God.
Initially, it was just your
All right.
face we were seeing.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow. Okay, I
yeah.
think I need to stop that
But we can see
face.
your screen now.
Hold on, let me stop my
No, but your
video. I
screen.
don't want it to be on my face. Hold on.
We can see your screen now.
Okay. All right. So today we're going to be looking at modeling. And from the last class, we've already talked about modeling. And we were able to understand that modeling is very, very key in our data analysis, because without modeling, when you start analyzing your data, you will find out that it won't be giving you the accurate or accurate result that you need for your analysis. And that's why modeling is very important. And like we all know, in data analysis, we have like a pages that you have to kind of go through before you get to your final visualization reports and everything. And immediately you are done with importing your data, sourcing your data from wherever it's located, the next thing, the ideal thing to do is the cleaning, the shaping, the transforming, and everything. And then you go over to do your modeling. And that is what we're looking at today. And then part of what we're going to be looking at under modeling is what we call the optimizing model performance. Now, because every day we keep having new data, and not just data, we keep seeing more of big data. Our data sets are running into millions, billions, depending on the parastatal, the organization, the setup, the establishment, whatever it is. You find out that these days we have more data sets being used. Now, Power BI is so awesome. It's one of the analytical tools that is able to deal with big data, right? However, in as much we know that this tool is very, very powerful when it comes to analysis, we also need to also help the tool perform better. And that's where model performance comes into play. When we talk about model performance, what we're going to look at is data model performance optimization, direct query model optimization. And we hope to be able to identify poor performing measures, relationship, visuals, reduce cardinality levels to improve performance. Now, when you look at the screen, you'll find out that what we have is what we call our desktop, our Power BI desktop. Remember, we have our Power BI divided into three parts, which includes the Power BI desktop.
Chama, I can't see your screen. Is it just me? I can still see
Well,
your picture, not your screen. Is it the same for everyone else?
all right, hold on. I don't know what's happening, but let me
Yeah, it's the
see.
picture. We can't see the screen.
It's just your picture. We see, we know you. We've seen your face. Thank you. Mhm.
No, that's me now. Okay, hold on. Can you see? What can you see now? Let me know what's happening at the moment.
Our names on the screen. Our names. The names.
This is OS. Can you see my screen now?
Not yet. Coming up.
What is happening?
Yeah, we can see your screen
All right.
now. Introduction to performance optimization.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. So, all right. So back to what I was saying. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate. And back to what I was saying. In Power BI is divided into three parts. We have the Power BI desktop, the Power BI service, and the Power BI mobile. Now, we want to be able to look at how we can help our Power BI perform better when it's dealing with all our different data sets. So that by the time we go on to publish it on our Power BI service, whoever that is accessing it, whether they're accessing it from the mobile phones or wherever, they don't get to have delays or lag. You know, there are some sites that you go to and then you are trying to access the site and it keeps kind of you find out that there is this circular icon that keeps rotating and it keeps going on and on. It can be frustrating sometimes, and this is part of the things you don't want your consumers or your customers or whoever that is using your platform. Now, there are different ways to achieve, to be able to optimize our model data set. Now, one of the ways is looking at our DAX. Last we looked at introduction to DAX, and we were able to calculate some functions or perform some functions using the DAX function. And when you are trying to come up with an analysis and you are using DAX, you tend to use a lot of lines when you're trying to come up with something. Let's take, for example, what we have at this on our screen right now. We're trying to calculate the sales of year-over-year growth. And for you to achieve this, you can see a lot of DAX function coming into play. You can see the divide function, you can see the calculate function, you can see the parallel period, you can see the this is what we're trying to achieve using this DAX. Now, this is beautiful. This is awesome because at the end of the day, it's going to help you achieve something. However, while we're trying to help our data, our model perform better, there's something we call using variables. And that is one of the ways we can actually help optimize our model system. One of the ways of doing that is using variable. If we look closely, if you look at this first part, which is without variable, you can see we're trying to calculate the sales year-over-year growth. Now, what we are trying to achieve is we're trying to use the divide function to calculate the sales and calculate the sales within a particular period of time. You remember that year-over-year has to do with, I'm trying to calculate year 2021 as against the year 2020. So I'm trying to compare these two now. This is the function that gives me that. But if you look at it, it's kind of looking so, even looking at it, you are trying to figure out what's happening here. Now, Power BI, in Power BI, we're trying to tell people, instead of just having this function the way it is here, right? Why not try to break it down by using variables? The beautiful thing about variables is that it takes a particular function, keep it for you, takes another function, line of function, keep it for you, and then by the time you are coming up with your final calculation or mathematical or whatever analysis you are doing, it's easier to comprehend it. Now, what do I mean by that? If you look at this first part, which is when we're looking at with variables, which says sales year over year growth, we have variable sales prior year. So we are trying to calculate for the previous year. Let's take, for example, for the year 2020, we're trying to calculate the sales for that year. We can go ahead and use this as our variable. This is the variable name. I'm trying to say use variable sales prior year to give me for the year 2020. You can decide to give it any name. If, for example, you're the one trying to do this, you can decide to say year 2020 year over sales growth. You can name it that. This is just a variable which is at your own discretion. But here we have decided to call it variable sales prior year. Now, what do we want to calculate? If you look at these parts, I don't know if you can see my cursor. If you look at the parts, when you go back to the very first DAX function where you have the without variable, when you go into the bracket after divide, you're going to see the part that talks about calculates, oh no, what happened? You're going to see the part that talks about calculate sales per period, dates, that's the date table in dates column in the date table for the last 12 years, and then you define your months. This same line is the same as this. Now, what I'm going to try Power BI is, please just take this part for me and call it this variable var sales per year. I have just defined this whole line of calculation that you can see here. Then I can now go ahead and tell Power BI, please, since I've defined this variable, I want to also go ahead now and impute this variable that I've been able to define. Now, Power BI have been able to calculate this without ease because it's simpler. It looks at it and it understands that I want you to calculate the sales for a particular period of time within the last 12 months. It does that, it keeps the whatever figure that's there. Now, going back to my main function, which is the sales year over year growth, I'm going to substitute for every time I see calculate sales per period, date minus 12 months, and so on and so forth. I'm going to substitute it with variable sales per year. Now that's what I'm trying to achieve in the next line. I'll simply go to this first DAX function that I have here, look for this particular statement which says calculate sales per period, date minus 12 months. And then I'm going to replace it with variable sales per year. Once I do that, you find out that what I'm left with divide sales, which is the first thing we had in our first DAX. And then the next line that I have in our first DAX is equivalent to my variable sales per year. I'm going to replace it with that. And then also, I'm going to also replace it. The next line I also have is the same variable. I'm so going to replace it with that. Now, if you look at this new line of calculations that I have, it's easier to comprehend. I mean, for some people that don't like mathematics, looking at this is better for you than looking at the first DAX. Now, for human beings, it's even easier for us to comprehend what's happening here. Power BI also, it helps Power BI to understand, okay, instead of having to do all this calculation at once, I can break it down and then take it one after the other. Whatever output I get from my variable, I simply replace it with the main function in the main calculation and then give my output. So they're trying to tell us, instead of having so many lines of DAX trying to calculate one particular thing, please break it down using variables and then at the end of the day, you still achieve the same result. So if you look at the function, the DAX function that I have for without variable and with variable, it's still going to return the same for both of them. The only difference is that the one with variable has made it easier for Power BI to perform better. Moving on to the next one. Another thing that we can help when it comes to our model optimization is what we call the performance analyzer. So sometimes if you notice that your visuals are taking time to come on, you want to actually understand what's happening, what's actually causing the delay. One of the ways, or one way you can use to find out that
sorry,
is
Chema, 1 minute. Yeah, could you, Chema, can you hear me? Excuse me, Chema.
Yes,
Chema.
please.
Yeah, can you go back to your last slide, because some of them
you.
I want to take. Yeah, could you go back to your last slide, because some of them, they should really put the formats down so at least they can, yeah, follow later. Yeah, just for some minutes, let them take it down. Okay.
All right, all right. Okay. So far, we've just been able to look at one way we can help our model perform better, and that is the use of variables. And just like I was saying before, whenever you find out that maybe when you're trying to create your visuals and you want your visuals to come up and you're having delays, we can actually detect what is happening to that visual using our performance analyzer. And what our performance analyzer simply does is that it helps us to look at that particular visual and understand what's happening there. It breaks down it takes for everything that is happening on that visual to perform. You can see it helps us to find out how each report element is performing, measure report elements during user interaction, and detect which aspects are least or most resource intensive. That helps us to do. Now, by the time you use your performance analyzer to analyze your visual, this is what it looks like at the end of the day. It's telling you, okay, this type of visual, this is a card visual. And then for the DAX query, it's taking me 94 milliseconds, right? My visual as a whole is taking up to 1,913 milliseconds. Under that, my card visual is now breaking it down further to tell me that the DAX query that is going on there takes about 94 milliseconds. The visual display takes 21 seconds, while every other thing that is happening on that card visual takes up to 1,797 milliseconds. The same if it tells you for all the visuals that you have on that particular report. It tells you about the slicer, the sales by quarter. All you need to do if you want to see the breakdown, you just need to click on the plus button and it will kind of give you detailed information about a particular visual. So that's what our performance analyzer helps us to do. And just like it said, it look at each visual and how long it's taking. Now you cannot be able to detect, okay, it could be it's coming from my DAX query. If it's coming from my DAX, maybe I want to go back and look at my DAX. Perhaps I've given that kind of complex DAX that we had in our previous slide where we had without variables. And Power BI is taking it more time to process that. Now you can now decide, okay, because it's taking more time to perform my DAX function, perhaps I should look at using a variable. That's the essence of making use of performance analyzer. Now, also, just a continuation of what I've just discussed. If the problem is coming from your DAX query, One of the ways I've talked about is using variables. Another thing is to look at the function you are using. Sometimes in Power BI, we have different functions that perform almost the same thing. It's just that it depends on the way it goes about it. If you look at what we have on our screen, you have the count customers. For the very first um, DAX, we have calculate distance count, look at the product ID in the order table, filter it down using the order quantity column in the order table where it's greater than or equal to 5. That's what this function, we're telling this function now to go ahead and do a distance count after you have done a filter for us, right? Now, this same function can also be replaced with the next dash that we can see in the next line, which is calculate product ID, keep filters. Now, the only difference between the counts customer DAX 1 and the second DAX is the function filter and keep filters. If we look at this left side of the analyze query plans, usual DAX query, you find out that it takes the DAX query 2,754 milliseconds. Same DAX can be replaced with, okay, the DAX function filter can be replaced with key filters and still trying to calculate the same thing that we're able to calculate in the first one, and we'll still get the same answer. But this time around, because we're using keep filters, you will now be using the DAX function that it will be the duration is going to be taken for our DAX query to perform is 54 milliseconds. Now, this is like a huge gap or difference between what we had before and the other first, and this was achieved simply by using another DAX function different from the first one that we used. Now, somebody is going to ask me, how do we know all this? It's not going to be easy grabbing it in one day. It's by constant practice. So by the time you keep working if you keep working with your Power BI, and the beautiful thing about this now is that whenever you go online and you want to perform a particular, let's say a particular DAS calculation, there are 1,001 people that have done this online, and they are using different functions. By the time you use a particular function and use another one, you can detect, okay, which one is better for me to perform that same function. You don't need to start looking for, oh, should I use this or this? Because I already know by my normal performance analyzer that this particular function is going to take more space. But if you, at the end of the day, you use a particular function and it even goes ahead to take up so much space and it doesn't affect your visual, I mean, if you're not doing so much on your visual, on your reports, you might not even notice all this. It only starts to come into play when you are dealing with a very huge data set, and we are talking about millions, billions of data set. That's when maybe you can start seeing all this. But if you're just dealing with just a few data sets that are just maybe in thousands or so on, you might not notice all this lag. We're just talking about when you start dealing with bigger data sets. Now, another way we can also help with our model performance is what we call the cardinality function. Now, the more, how do I put it now? The more, so before I get to this, let me explain something. There's something we call unique and distinct, um, unique and distinct. So under your column, when you do your column distribution, we have the distinct function and we have the unique. Unique means that that particular element is occurring just once and is not occurring twice, more than once in a particular column. Let's take, for example, when you are dealing with employees and you are dealing with, let's say, their emails. Everybody has a unique email. My email can never be the same with yours. Your email can never be the same with the next person. Now, in that case, now you find out that our emails are unique, and so when they Power BI is counting, looking at the column distribution for email column, it's going to see it as unique because for each email it's occurring just once. Now, distance is the not it means that that particular element can occur more than once. Let's say, for example, if we are looking at everybody on this call now, and we're trying to dictate our states of origin, it's possible that I am from Anambra State, whoever, I'm just going to use random. Some other person is from Lagos State, some other person is from another state. There's a possibility that on this call, as we are now, that two other persons are from the same states as myself. And so by the time we start looking at our state of origin column, you find out that, for example, you have Choma coming from Lagos State, you might have Yinka coming from Lagos State, you might have Franca coming from, let's say, Benue State, who again is on this call, Lara coming from Adamawa State. Now, when we look at the distribution of that column, we can find out that Lagos State is occurring more than once. It's occurring twice. And so it's fine because it's something that is occurring more than once. Now, we're not going to say it's unique anymore because it's not just unique to one person. It's now more than one person having to come from that particular state. And then we start talking about distance. But now, when we want to talk about distance now, instead of saying, I've already mentioned 4 names with different states, Lagos, Benue, Adamawa. Instead of Power BI counting it as 4 states, it's going to count it as 3 because it understands that Lagos is the same as the same Lagos that is occurring again, but Benue is different, Adamawa is different. So Power BI will count it as 3 districts. So it means that a particular state is occurring more than once, but when Power BI wants to count, it's going to count it as 1. Now, when you have this kind of distribution, I was just trying to explain the difference between distinct and unique. When you have this kind of distribution, Power BI tends to do better with distance because it understands that once it counts Lagos, Lagos is once and it will just see it as once. But when it's dealing with emails, because it's different people, it keeps counting it 1, 1, 1, 1 different. And so if you have 30 people on that particular data set, it's going to see it as 30 unique. While these 30 people could come from different states, and by the time it's doing its distance count, it might just be 10 distinct. So Power BI tends to do better when you are dealing with distance than unique. I hope it makes sense. I hope it's clear. So that's another way you can help Power BI with your optimization. If you can try to deal with more columns that are, I mean, it doesn't mean you should go and swatch your data sets, no. However, it's only telling you when you're looking out for performance, you also know that these are the things that are contributing to the performance of your system. Then we also have the granularity, where you have to deal with one-to-one, one-to-many, and so many on and so forth. Power BI is better off with one-to-many or many, but when you are dealing with many-to-many, it becomes more cumbersome for Power BI. And that's that for our optimization. Then there are other things that are not covered here. I'm sure we must have discussed that to help your to help your modeling. One of the ways is before you bring in your data set, if there are some cleaning you can do before you bring it in. Let's take, for example, if you have to bring in a particular data set that has up to 10 columns and you don't have to make use of the 10 columns, there is no need bringing in those 10 columns. Perhaps you have it on your Excel. You can help Power BI by removing those columns that you might not use and just bring in the ones that you can use. This is one way you can help with your data Power BI optimization. Another thing is when you are doing your cleaning, right? In Power BI, Once you are done bringing in your data sets, another thing you want to do is the cleaning, the shaping, the transforming. When we're doing the cleaning, part of what we do under cleaning is what we call removing of columns, removing of rows, what else? So many of them. But if while you're doing your removing of columns and you have to remove, let's say we have 20 columns and you have to remove up to 7 of them, and you are doing the removing of column one by one. So you go to the first column, you do remove column, go to the second one, remove column. All these are actually telling on your modeling performance. So you don't want to do that. Instead of doing that, it's best practice would be to highlight all the columns involved and remove all of them at once. Now we're going to look at optimized direct query models. Now, in Power BI, there are two types of storage modes. We have the import and we have the direct query. The import is what we're used to, where you go to your get data. If your data set is located on your, let's say, on a spreadsheet, you import it into your Power BI and then you continue from there. But direct query, it means instead of importing what I have there into Power BI, I'm just going to be accessing it from my Power directly on wherever it's located. If it's a database, I'm not going to move it. I'm simply going to be accessing it directly on that database using the direct query. And there are so many benefits of using direct query. It helps. So most times people get to use direct query if you're working in a place where the data sets are being updated almost on daily basis. It depends on what do I use as an example. If you are working in, what do I use now? Let's even use immigration, for example. If you're working in immigration, the number of people migrating or coming into a particular place keeps on increasing every day, depending, I don't know, maybe let's say daily. Now, because the data set is always changing, you might want to, okay, connect directly to that database or wherever the data is located, so that instead of having to do refreshes every day, you know that you're just, as it's happening, it's real time, you are getting your data. But if you have large volumes of data sets, sometimes you might not want to bring it into your Power BI, because bringing it into Power BI, like I said, it tells on the performance. So in order to also help it, instead of having to bring it in by importing it, you could just access it directly wherever it's located, and you'll be fine. You'll still get the same results that you want. And then it also supports multidimensional data. Now, one of some of the limitations of using direct query. Now, the first one is the performance. If the database where you're connecting to now, or whatever source that you're connecting to, I will keep using database as my example, so that we just have a particular example that we're working with. If you're connecting to a relational database, for example, and the performance of that, let's say SQL database is not so wonderful, it will automatically also affect you that is working on your Power BI. So this is one of the limitations of using direct query. Whatever that is happening to your source affects you. And this time around, you don't have control over it. That's one of the limitations of using direct query. Another thing is security. You don't understand how, you don't have control over the data source, because you might just be limited in what you can do there. It's not per se your own, you don't have full access to there. You might be limited and you don't even know what goes on there. So this is another limitation that Power BI might have when we are doing a direct query. Also, your modeling. Some modeling capabilities are limited or aren't supported. It's different from when you are importing into your system. You can decide to do certain things, but because you are working on a direct query and you don't have the authority to do the flexibility actually to do alter certain things, you might be limited in the way you model your data source as well as transformation. When you bring in your data set into your Power BI, you have the liberty to transform, clean, delete, even go back to the steps. If you find out that you've been able to, you want to still rework on something, you have the apply steps that can help you go back and make some changes. But you don't have that flexibility when you have a direct query. I'm going to try and start running over this. And then we have the query reduction where you have to do your settings. So in Power BI, there's a part where we have options where you do some settings. When you find out that maybe the performance of your system is kind of slow, you can also try to do one or two things by tweaking it. By default, your Power BI is always on add an apply button, a single. There are some default that are there. What you can do is try to change some of those settings, and it will help your performance. Um, if you want to read more on this will help you. You can go to this particular link and it will help you. Now, another thing we're going to look at is what we call the row level security. Um, row level row level security simply means, in layman terms, is a situation where people working in the same organization and perhaps a report has been published, but you want to give limited access to certain persons. So you're working in an organization and maybe you have different departments, and the IT team, the data analytical team have come up with their reports, but you don't want certain departments to have access to all the reports that has been published. As the CEO, as the manager, as management, you might have access to everything that has been published. But maybe by the time you start narrowing it down to different departments, you don't want everybody seeing what is happening in other departments. Let's take, for example, you have, let's say you have the sales department, you have the, um, which other departments? I'm lost for words now. And let's just assume you have the logistics department, you have just name them, but you don't want logistics department to see what is happening in sales department. You don't want sales department to see what is happening in logistics department, and so on and so forth. That is where our row level security comes into play. And this is actually where you have to, it simply means that you are trying to work with the Active Directory users and groups, trying to classify people according to the level of access they will have. You can, for some people, they will say this is like filtering. Yes, in a way, it's kind of, you're trying to filter down what assets people have at different levels. So that is what we achieve using our row level security. Now we have two types. We have the static and we have the dynamic. The static is where you have a particular dash function that you use, and then you do to do. If you come to this particular, if you come to the company, looking at what we have here, you have the game. It's trying to say, okay, people in games department, when it comes, I want them to only see what is related to game, the sales for the games department. Any other thing apart from games department, please, they shouldn't have access to it. So if you're in automotive department, you can't have access to game. If you're in game, you can't have access to automotive, clothing, sports, and so on and so forth. That's what static does. In dynamic, it's a little bit different. Dynamic simply means that instead of having to always do this always, you do it once, and no matter the type of report that comes in, you're fine. And that's where we use the function user principal name. It helps us. Most times it might be, maybe if you're dealing with the employee email, you simply use it to tell the employees that this is what Power BI, this is what I want you to do for me. I'm kind of rushing now because I think we've spent so much time trying to explain this. So far, we've covered a lot in terms of modeling. All right. Yes, we've covered a lot in terms of modeling. All right, let me remove this.
Sorry,
Last
what is the
week,
question?
Yeah, is somebody trying to say something?
Yes, please. I'm still struggling with getting the difference between the what you just finished explaining. So the dynamic role level security and the static one. Like I still didn't get it quite well.
Okay. So the static is like what is, let me go back to that. Anyway, let me just go ahead and explain. Static, just like what I've been trying to explain before now. Static is kind of static, just like the name. If I come to a particular department and I tell Power BI, please, anybody in Gains department, give them access to only the sales for that particular department. Power BI will do it for me. But in dynamic, this time around, it's kind of high level. It's not just, you're not just limiting it to a particular department per se. It doesn't mean you're not still limiting it, like giving it access to just that department, but this time around there is more going on.
Sorry, am I the only one that's lost her?
Maybe her internet threw her
Can
out.
you
I
hear me
can't hear
now?
you.
Chioma, okay, are you back? Okay, yeah,
All right.
we can hear you now.
In dynamic, it simply means that once you set it up, you don't have to keep setting it up all the time. It's Power BI now understands that you are dealing with a particular email address, and email address are unique, is kind of unique to that particular person. And so you already understand that there are some access that has been given to the person to access. So anytime I keep working and I'm bringing out reports, I don't need to keep doing this over and over. That's the difference between the dynamic and static. And is it clear at all?
So
Hello?
yeah, I'm with you.
All
So
right.
does it mean that, for example, if I'm in games department, for example, if I move over to another department and we're talking about dynamic RLS, you don't need to do anything as the analyst. Is that what it means?
So the configuration doesn't just, so anytime somebody moves, you kind of automatically, you should still do a configuration that tells Power BI that there are some changes. But it's on the difference now is that if I'm creating, you don't need to keep changing. It's different from when somebody moves from a department to another department. You still need to let like your Active Directory understand that this person is no more in this department. This person is now in this department. Once Power BI sees that email address, it picks it up and understand, okay, this is the access this person now has. It's no more, this person is no more in this department. This person is now in this department. It's different. Your question now is reports come in like every day and it could change. It's different from when somebody moves from a particular position and moves to another one. There's something called Active Directory, and forever, every time there are changes like that, you still need to come up with that configuration.
Okay,
Is it
thank
clear?
you. Kind of. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Um, yes. The last time, the last time that we worked with our modeling data sets, we did a lot of things. And I'm not going to go into all those details, even though we'll do a recap. Part of what we looked at was modeling, and then we talked about, first and foremost, the relationship, the different relationship we have, which is the one-to-one, one to many, many to one, and many to many. These are the different relationships we have. This was the data set we worked, the relationship we came up with the last time, where we had different tables. And what we simply did was to connect each table to the main table. In this case, the main table is the fact table. And then we have the dimension table. And just like we know, dimension table refers to, that table talks to a particular instance, kind of. In this case, where you have products, it means it's simply telling detailed information about it. Promotion table talks about the promotion in details. But the fact table has like an instance of all this. And so you have what we call the primary keys and the secondary keys, where you have each primary key here being represented on our fact table. And then when they come on the fact table, it becomes a secondary key. And that is what we use in creating our relationship. The tables to link up. Now, when you have a one-to-many, it simply means that if you come to this table, I have a particular element, instance, occurring only once on this table. But when you go to my sales table, it can occur more than. That's what it simply many times here. One-to-one means it's occurring once here and it's also occurring once. These are the different relationships. We were able to do that last week. We were able to understand that you can manage relationship by going to your modeling table and then clicking on this, and you can create your relationships. Or you can decide to drag the key, like in this case now, if I want to know the relationship between these two, I can see that the relationship I have here is between the state key and ST, and so on and so forth. That's for the relationship. This is one of the things that we do in modeling. Another thing we do in modeling, which we covered last week, is what we call the table properties and the column properties. This pane is where we have our tables with all the columns. It is what we have where we have the properties. Now, for each of these, you have the liberty to go ahead and model it the way you want it. All right. If we look at, let's say, for example, the channel table, these are the properties. If there is something you want to change here, you can go ahead and do that. When you go down to the column, it tells you different things about the column. And while you are doing this, there are different things we have here, which we covered last week. You have the description, you have the synonyms. This synonyms comes in, is very, very key, because if your customers are trying to assess a particular thing, they might have different words or different ways that they actually refer to a particular word. And synonym helps you to accommodate all those words at the same time without having to alter your data set. And then we have the formatting, where you decide whether it's a text, whether it's a number, whether it's whatever it is, you decide it from this. And then also we have the formatting, same as, and if you're dealing with numbers, you could define it as percentage or decimal, or depending on what it is. Then you still have the advanced, where, sorry, I'm trying to come down. The advanced, where we do another type of modeling, which we refer to as categorization. Categorization comes into play, especially when you are dealing with, let's say, location, geographical locations. Categorization helps you to narrow it down so that Power BI understands, okay, we're dealing with locations here, and helps you to identify it better. If you look at our categorization pane, you see that you have different things, where maybe if you're dealing with an address, you tell Power BI this is an address. If it's a city, if it's a continent, country, when you're dealing with latitude and longitude, it will help you define it further. All this helps Power BI understand better. Also, when you're dealing with URL, right? Power BI understands, okay, I'm dealing with an image here, I'm dealing with a web here. And then also, if you're dealing with, all these QR codes, barcodes, and so on and so forth, you can still have the liberty and the flexibility to go ahead and categorize it here. Summarize, when you're dealing with numbers, okay, by default, Power BI is always on sum. When you're dealing with numbers, it's always seeing it at sum, but you could be working with something and you don't want to work with the sum. It could be the average. You can try to change that using the summarize function, and then null or not null, whether it's, you can click it to be yes or no. This is another thing that we looked at, modeling. I can also see that we did calculated columns, but I'm not going to go into that last week. And then we have our date table. I'm going to dive into date table a little bit, but I'm not going to do much there. We have done a lot on date table. Last week, we were able to create date table. Let's start my date table. We're able to create date table using DAX function. But the only thing I'm going to do when it comes to date table this week is when you have a code, M language code, that's it's built specifically for date table. So some experts has been able to come up with M query that talks about date table and has it detailed into months, days, days of the week, quarter, and so on and so forth. If you want to do with that kind of data set, one way you can do that, apart from the normal DAX where you have to do your calendar auto, or defining your calendar, or your date table. One of the ways we can do that, we have what will have the M code. This, if we don't have it, I might upload it on this thing later on. The date Now it's kind of very detailed where you have your year number, quarter, month, day, this. If you want to work with this code, if you're using your data set and you want to bring in this code, what you simply need to do is copy this, right? This code and Power BI. Go to your Power BI, just the normal way you bring in your data sets, like get data and so on and so forth. I can just say for right now, and Power BI will automatically take me back to my Power Query. And then when I come to my Power Query, I want to tell Power BI what I want to do, which is I want to create a date table, and I simply need to go to my advanced editor, click on it. It brings up a query pane. Now this is, if you are good with query, M language query, you can start typing this. And that's just what we're going to do. But this time around, we're not the ones that are the main people that have come up with that code. This code is kind of online and people are using it because of how detailed it is for date table. So I'm just going to replace this query with what I've copied from that date query. It says no, that's no syntax error have been detected. All right. That means this my query to go. Power BI understands that it's perfect. I can work with it and I can say done. Once I click on done, it's going to populate a parameter for me and it will ask me, this table, this date query that you have come up with, when do you want it to be your start date? When do you want it to be your end? We can go ahead and tell Power Query, let's say, populate a date table that starts from which year now? Let's say 1st of January 20, 20, what do I use now? Let's say 14. I'm just guessing. And then for our end dates, you tell Power BI the Power Query when you want it to be your end date. Let's say till the year 2020. Can say 31st of December 2020. and it's the other way around. Okay. Yeah. So it should be month first. Don't mind me. This system is kind of pretty new. I just got it yesterday. So I haven't been able to work on the date format. So in this case now, it's coming as month before the day. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not giving me that function. And then fiscal year start month. For some people in their companies, they have by default for everybody is but in this case now, I'm fine. I don't want anything. I'll just stop Power BI. Let's say maybe 13 and invoke. Now I have just populated my date table using the query that I had. I can go ahead and rename this and call it, what do I call it now? What do I call it now? Uh, Date table M underscore M, maybe. Date table right, and that's it. Close and apply. So this is one way we can deal with date table. If you do not want to generate your own date table and you want to work with what we have there, you can do that. I'm going to look at this date table that we just created, which is yeah, that's it, date table. I want to take a look at it. This is what we have just generated. We have the date, the year, the quarter of the year, month of the year, day of the month, day, the interval, month name, calendar, just like the so on and so forth, up till the physical year. If you look at this, you can find out there's more details. So that's why some people sometimes tend to use this. But if you don't need all these details, you can just go ahead and use your DAX function to create your date table. So that's one way of creating our date table. Now, there's something I wanted to show us just before I conclude that. Um, if you are trying to do this, sorry, if you are trying to create that date query, that date table using the M query, I'm going to go through it again, and I'm going to copy a code that is obviously it's wrong, or it's not that it's wrong, but there are some errors that you need to do some troubleshooting. I want to show us something. Go to advanced query. I'm going to copy this. Okay. All right. Oh, it's telling me no syntax error. I'm going to do some. I'm going to do something. Mhm. Okay. What did I even do now? I'm trying to see where you have error. What is most likely to happen? This no syntax error has been detected. Will sorry, I'm coming. Let me trying to see. Let me copy. I want that error to show so that we can see what we're dealing with here. Hmm. Right. Control C. Control paste. Oh, this is okay. However, I wanted to tell us that if our code is wrong and we put it in here, you will have error. It will flag it as error, telling you need to still work on this. And so you know that something is wrong and actually go back and rectify it. But I don't know. I thought there was error on this particular code. Apparently, there is none. All right. Going back, another thing we are going to look at, it's last week we also, I can see we also did hierarchy, and I'm sure we all remember that very well. I don't want to, our 1 hour is almost gone. Hierarchy, where you have to, it comes into play when you're dealing with a place that has hierarchy. One of it is like our date table, where you have the year, quarter, and so on and so forth. If you have in your organization, there is maybe like some hierarchy, you can do that as well. What other thing I want us to look at today is the role level that we talked about. It's manage roles. Sorry, I'm coming. Let's discuss changes. Yes, it's okay. If we look at our data sets, I'm trying to say we have state zone here, and I can see state here, I can see zone, and then let me say, for example, I don't want anybody that is in a particular state to see what is happening in other places. I can actually work on this using the role level that we talked about. And all I need to do is go to my manage roles, and I want to create a role level security for, let's say, hmm, for which state am I? FCT. I can say create and call it FCT. And which of the tables am I working with? Is this state zone? I come to this eclipses and say add filter. I want to filter the state key. No, no, not state key, states. And then I add the value. What value? For FCT, just give me value for FCT. FCT. Sorry. And save. Come on. Now, if for example I want to, I'm going to create a visual so that we'll see what we've done so far. I want to find out the, let's say, total sales. Let's just say total sales. I'm going to use my question and answer. Let's say, give me total sales. Sorry, total sale, yeah. Mhm. Oh, good. That's it. This is my total sale now. No, 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 no. Don't go there. This is my total sales for everything on this data set. Oh, God. My total sales for everything on this data set. And then as the manager, if I'm looking at the total sales, I'm seeing this because this is for all the states. But this time around, because I'm in FCT, I want to just see total sales for FCT. All I need to do to test run what I've done is to say view as. View as what? What do I want to? I want to view as FCT. Okay, go back to this. You find out that it's now giving me total sales for just FCT. Let me stop viewing. It's going to go back to the total number of sales. Let's try to create a total number of sales for FCT so that we can see what we have just been able to achieve with that RLS that we did. Total sale for in FCT, right? Yeah, this is it. This is what I have for FCT, right? Now, if I filter this total sales and I want to see for just FCT, all I need to do is view as FCT. and that's it. It's giving me the same value as this. That's to tell you this is in order. So what it means that whenever we do that, it's automatically filters it down to what we want that person to see. So for everybody in Abia State, the total, sorry, not in Abia State, FCT, the total sales they're going to be seeing is this. However, as the CEO or the manager or whatever position that I occupy, this is what I'm going to see. But by the time I start going into the different states, that's when it starts giving me the breakdown of the different states. Now, when you have done this, what I've just simply done now is to create a relation, to manage, like create roles for different states. Now, if I now want to assign people for each state, I can do that by now going further, but that will be when I'm already on my Power BI service. That is when I can now go and tell Power BI that when you come to FCT, see the people that are there, these are the people that should have access on that particular role. And then I start to assign different roles. I'm sure we'll look at that by the time we get to our Power BI service. So this is one way, this is how we create our RLS. Now, another thing I want us to touch before we go is our question and answer. Our question and answer, just what we've done so far. Maybe I'll do total what's now? What do we have there? Is it costs? Okay. Costs. I don't even need to do this anymore because what I want to do is to look at question and answer. If you go to our question and answer, this is what it looks like behind the scene. You have the few synonyms, you have the review questions, you have the teach Q&A, you have the manage terms, you have the suggest questions. Now for the few synonyms, now this few synonyms kind of very, very, I've said it before. When you're modeling, you have the parts under your column properties where you can define your synonyms. Likewise, when you go to your question and answer, because maybe people will be keying in different questions, you want Power BI to also look at different synonyms that are the same with what you have already on your data set, right? You can tell, okay, let me even expand one of these columns. Where do I have my sales? This should be my sales. Power BI is kind of course, has AI properties that helps it. Now, if I go to my sales details table, I have the term sales detail. I have these are different things that I have. I can decide to define more things under it, right? Let me look for sales that we're dealing with now. Okay, let's even look at profits. Power BI understands that profit is profit, and anytime somebody clicks in to see what is our total profit for, let's say, FCT, it will give me my total profit. But what if the person does not want to call it profit and the person is calling it turnover? Power BI is telling me, it's just suggesting other things that people can call this. It's saying that people can call this income, revenue, turnover, return, yield. So for me now, because I'm the person in charge of this, I'm the administrator here. I can now say, okay, Power BI, anytime somebody is asking for turnover, please, can you tell the person that turnover is also profit? And then I can click on it and tell it, please recognize that profit is also turnover. So that by the time I go back and I click on total turnover, it's telling me this is it. Let's go back and click on, let's just test run what we've done so far. I'm going to close this. I'm going back to my report view. I want to tell Power BI, give me my total profits. No, what are you doing? Profits. Time it against us. I'll try and round up soon. Total profit. Power BI is telling me that my total profit is 32.45 million naira. Another person can come and say, Power BI, give me total turnover. Total turnover. It's the same thing because Power BI understands that profit is the same as turnover. Imagine if somebody comes and say, another person that sees profit as, let's say, return, maybe. So and person clicks total return, sorry, total return. Oh, Power BI is even smart. It's still giving me. I'm just trying to see what other things that people can click in, and Power BI might not understand that this is not a synonym of profits. Now, if this happens, and let's say if this happens, and let me even just say profit. Another thing you can use for profit is okay. Let me even go to our local dialects. Um, who is on this call? Because it seems like I've been talking to myself alone. Faith, are you there? Faith, hello. Can you guys hear me?
Hello, good evening, ma. Yes, I'm here. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought I was talking to myself all this while. All right.
No, no,
Faith,
no, we can hear
can you
you.
give me total profit? Let's say profit in your mother tongue, like your native dialect. What do you call
I don't know
profit?
it. Oh. I don't know it. Oh.
Okay, who can help me with profit in maybe Igbo, Yoruba, Tiv, anything? We are just trying to test run something here because I'm trying to look for other words for profit. Let me even go local because I mean you could be dealing with people. Okay, in French, what is profit in French? Am I
Okay,
going to
profit in Yoruba is ere, ere,
ere? Okay, ere. Okay,
It's
let's go ahead.
ERE, E-R-E. Yeah,
ere.
ERE.
Ere. All right, let's try that. Okay, give me total ERE, right? Yeah. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
so okay.
ERE.
I thought Power BI recognized it. Okay, I'm telling Power BI, give me total array. Power BI is so clueless about what's array. What's array? I don't understand what's array. Now I can tell because maybe the people I'm dealing with, there's most likely that are Yoruba speaking people and they would likely be using array. What I would do is go back to my settings, my few synonyms, right? Go to my sales details where I'm trying to locate the profits. Under profit, I can now say, okay, please add array for me. All right. And then I go back again and I'm trying. Oh, Power BI now understands that array is total profit. Can you see that? Before now, it was giving me error or it was saying something, I can't remember. But obviously, it didn't understand what array is. So you can do this. This is one of the ways you can actually manage your question and answer. Now review questions. This comes into play when you have, of course, because you have launched your app and there are different people now putting in questions. You can see what people are doing from these review questions. So let's say Faith has come online and Faith is asking for total array. And because as the data analyst, I was so clueless, I'm dealing with people in this part of the world that actually recognizes that profit is array. And I've kind of silently not even recognized that some of them might be asking that question, right? I can see this now on my review question. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should do this. I should put array as one of the synonyms of profits. This is where you can do that. Now, this question and answer, it's where just something similar to what I've done. So because I've reviewed people's question and I understand that, okay, that people are asking certain questions and I understand what they're trying to achieve there, I can now come here and try to work on that and improve that so that if tomorrow some other person comes in and do the same thing, the person can now get feedback for whatever they're looking for. And likewise, our managed time, today we've been able to do turnover, array, and so on and so forth. If you want to delete this, you can go ahead and delete it, and then Power BI understands that this is no more part of what we're doing. And then we have the suggested questions. So apart from questions that you on your own you're thinking of and are coming up with, Power BI can suggest certain questions and maybe it can go as far as, because we are dealing, question and answer has to do with natural language, right? We're encouraging people's different dialects, irrespective of where you're from. Power BI, we are trying to inculcate all these languages into Power BI. That's even the essence of question and answer, to help our natural language natural languages. So here we can have the opportunity to actually do this. So Power BI can even suggest to us here. We're not seeing much here because we haven't launched an app and we haven't seen people asking questions and everything. But if, for example, you have launched an app and these are communicating with your customers wherever they are now, and they're now coming up, because one thing we've discovered, which is natural, is that people like to ask questions. It's just like when you go to Google and you're asking Google, please, where can I locate this? Where can I do this? Likewise, when people come to apps like this and they see that by simply asking, can I know the total sales for Oyo State? Power BI can bring it up. You find out that people are more tilted towards that. And that's why the question and answer visual is very, very important. And that is why Power BI has gone up ahead to have all these flexible settings, or what do you call it now? Yeah, settings or whatever in question and answer, so that you as the data analyst can go further to do more things on it. By reviewing what people have done, you can improve further on what your app is doing. So with that, we'll come to the end of today's class. Our time is fast spent. I wanted to spend 1 hour, but I spent more than that. And what else do I need to cover? Any other thing that we need to cover in modeling is most likely we are going to cover it in the Power BI service, because I'm not going to Power BI service because we are not yet there. And we need to still do our visuals, analysis, and then before we publish on our Power BI service. So that is all for now under our modeling section. Questions, please.
Okay, but Shema, the classes are actually 1.5 hours. It's been cut down from 2 hours to 1.5. So, yeah, not 1
This is
hour.
already
So
1.5 hour.
yeah. No, I'm saying that you're on track. You were saying 1
Okay,
hour.
I'm still on track, right? Okay.
Yes, yes.
All right. Questions. We're not much today. We have Anapi, you are here. Nice to
Yes,
see you.
ma'am. Good evening. I was
Okay.
the one asking about the RLS.
Oh, Anapi, I should be coming for lectures now. Okay, I see. All right.
Okay, so are there any questions before we go? There are none.
We call it a day then.
Hello, good evening, ma.
Yes, please.
Please, I would like to know the reason why we model data.
Why do we model data? We model data for so many reasons. First and foremost, we model data so that by the time we start doing our analysis, we are getting the right answers. We model data so that when you do your hierarchy, when you want to drill down, so by the time I'm coming up with my analysis and I want to drill down, maybe I'm trying to look at the total sales for the year, right? 2020, 2021, 2022. Modeling will help me so that if I'm looking at, let's say, for the past 5 years, I'm seeing that for the year 2020, we didn't perform so well, right? And it seems like it's the least. Modeling will help me to now drill further to understand, okay, what is happening here? I can now drill down on 2020 and say, okay, let me analyze it by the months. So in January, how did we perform? February, and maybe by the time I'm looking at my months, I can see that maybe for a particular month, let's say in March, April, June, July, we didn't perform. Like that was like our list. We had like a dip, right? I can still go ahead to drill down. I want to look at it by the week or even by the days. What really happened? This I will now start asking questions, because we are not just dealing with sales now. There are other attributes that we are dealing with, which could be speaking to maybe location, speaking to the product, speaking to whatever. By the time I start drilling down, I'm trying to understand, okay, we didn't perform so well in the year 2020 because of COVID. Yes, COVID was actually more in the month of March. This is what modeling helps us. It helps us that's why we do hierarchy in modeling. It helps us to understand the details of our data sets. Now, another thing modeling helps us is categorization, right? When I come to my data set, Power BI, yes, it's very, very good. It's a very powerful tool, but at the same time, it's still a machine. It's still a device that you still need to like, or rather an app or a software that you still need to like help it understand certain things better. Now, if I tell Power BI that I'm categorizing this as a country, you understand, okay, we're dealing with location. And whenever you talk about location, what comes to your mind is maps, right? So Power BI understands, okay, maybe when I'm coming up with a visual, it should be dealing with maps, maybe, or Power BI understands, okay, we're looking at locations, we're looking at countries, we're looking at states, right? That's the essence of doing one of the reasons why we model. Another reason why we model is when we come to formatting. When you're formatting your data sets, you have different types of formats. You have the dates, you have the text, you have the numbers, you have decimal, current, so many things, right? When you format, you are simply helping Power BI to perform better. If you look at our visual, we had Naira. Let me go back to that visual. 1 minute, please. Where do I have my visual? Oh my God. Power BI, all right. That's it. You can see that we have this showing me in Naira. It simply means that whoever that have done this modeling has gone ahead to even tell BI that we are dealing with Naira. So no matter who you are, even if you're not a Nigerian and you look at this, you know we are dealing with this currency. But imagine having just 32.45 million. I don't know if you're talking about dollars. I don't know if you're talking about pounds, Canadian dollar, euro, whatever currency you're dealing with. But Power BI will help me when I'm doing my modeling to tell me, okay, once I look at this, once I see Naira, I know that we're dealing with Naira. So if I'm looking at 32.45 million, I know that we're dealing with 32.45 million Naira. I'm not questioning whether it's pounds or dollars. Another thing, there's so many things that modeling does for us. And by the time, if you have not done all this, and you're doing your analysis, trust me, you will even get frustrated at some point. And at some point, Power BI will start to even misbehave because it's becoming more complex for it. And this is not what it wants. But by the time you have done your modeling and you go to start looking at your analysis, it's going to be seamless. Like it's going to be much, much easier to perform and bring out reports for you. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other question? I think that's it for today. And this is 7:30. It's 1 hour 30 minutes. Awesome. So without any other question, yeah, that's it for me for today. Yinka, do you have anything?
No, nothing from me.
Yeah. So by next week, we're going to be looking at analyzing in Power BI.
Analyzing data.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Onapi. Thank you, Faith. Thank you, Franca. Thank you, Inka. I know Gloria joined at some point. I don't know
Thank
Thank
you
you,
anything.
very much,
Lara.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Lara.
Victoria,
Please, oh,
Mercy,
I'm here.
Jay,
Oh, I'm here.
everybody.
Please. Gloria is here.
I'm just seeing 4 people here. Oh my God. Okay, 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 okay. My bad.
She called Gloria, and I thought I heard Gloria.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
here,
Yeah, Gloria
Yinka.
is here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm here.
Victoria.
nine
Tracy.
of us.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. All right.
Okay,
Thank you
Jay.
so much.
Jay
Thank you,
has dropped
ladies.
off.
Have a good evening.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Okay. Good night,
Yeah, enjoy the rest of
everyone,
your
and have a
weekend.
nice weekend. You too. Okay, you want